Hi, my name is Lisa Shen, and I'm a product manager in Google Cloud. In this video, I'll talk a bit about Anthos and Anthos multi-cloud. Then I'll give you a demo of setting up Anthos GKE cluster on AWS via the Terraform script. I'll also show you how to view the logs and deploy a simple application to the cluster and examine the workload from the GCP console. More enterprise customers are either using or look into leveraging multiple cloud providers. The multi-cloud approach comes with added complexity in the form of multiple management interface, disparate policy enforcement, and complex security implications. Anthos provides a unified platform for managing the clusters across different clouds as well as on-prem. The clusters can be running inside of virtual machines and instances as well as on bare metal. Anthos is a 100% software product that extends Google Cloud services and engineering best practices to your environments so you can modernize apps faster and establish operational consistency across them. Anthos Configuration Management provides a central place to manage and configuration and security policies across your fleet so you can get the right governance at scale. Anthos also features a managed service mesh offering to connect, manage, and secure your VMs and containers. Google Cloud Logging and Cloud Monitoring provides an integrated logging and monitoring service for the containers, services, and applications. And on top of everything, Anthos provides developers with a rich set of tools such as Google Cloud Build, Cloud Deploy for a smooth modern application development experience. Specific to multi-cloud, Anthos allows you to manage clusters on Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure. Anthos manages not only Anthos GKE clusters on-prem and in multiple clouds, it also manages any standard CNCF compliant Kubernetes clusters. Anthos is a great multi-cluster management tool to manage, standardize, secure your clusters across multiple environments and Kubernetes vendors. Let's now dive a bit deeper into Anthos multi-cloud architecture on AWS and Azure. Anthos multi-cloud is a managed service that helps you provision, operate, and scale Kubernetes clusters in your AWS or Azure account. Anthos clusters are full Kubernetes clusters based on the AWS Azure infrastructure. They run on EC2 or Azure VMs and are fully integrated with cloud providers' native platform resources. With Anthos clusters, you get same distribution bits, same security patches, same networking technologies as you get with the GCP GKE cluster. The Anthos multi-cloud architecture has a few key components. For example, the multi-cloud cluster API is a standard Google Cloud REST API which provides cluster create, read, updates, delete operations. Anthos cluster on AWS use AWS API to provision resources needed by the cluster, including virtual machines, managed disks, auto-scaling group, security groups, and load balancers. And the same goes with Azure. And an Anthos service account with the Anthos multi-cloud API is enabled in your Google Cloud project. A Google managed service account will be automatically created with your project. This service account will be the security principal calling the Azure or AWS API. For the Connect API, when you register a cluster outside Google Cloud, Google Cloud uses a deployment called Connect Agent in the cluster to establish a secure connection via the Connect API between the cluster and your Google Cloud project, and to handle the Kubernetes requests. This enables access to the cluster and to workload management features in Google Cloud, so you have a unified user interface and cloud console to manage the cluster. The multi-cloud architecture gives customers a hosted, cloud-backed management control plan. Google takes care of the provisioning, upgrading, or backing up the management layer. Rollouts can be done on a regular basis by Google to deliver bug fixes and features. When a change is rolled out, it becomes available automatically for all customers without any action required on their part. There are multiple ways to perform lifecycle management of Anthos cluster on AWS or Azure. One option is to use G-Cloud COIs. As you can see, the COI example here in the slide. You'll create cluster control plane nodes first, followed by the node pool creations with the COI. And Terraform is another option for provisioning the Anthos multi-cloud clusters. Now let's jump right into the demo. In this demo, we'll be using the Terraform to set up the Anthos cluster on AWS. There are some prerequisites you need to perform beforehand. First, ensure your G-Cloud SDK version is 365 or greater. If you don't have the right SDK version, you can use the G-Cloud component update to get the right version. And also make sure that you have the AWS COI installed and set up with the AWS access key and secret. We also need to configure the GCP Terraform authentication via the G-Cloud auth command. I have taken care of this prerequisite prior to this video recording, so I will put a note here. Next step is to ensure you are in the correct Google project and then enable the GCP services in this project. In this demo, we're going to use a quick start Terraform script in the GitHub repo to provision the Anthos clusters on AWS. I will share the link at the end of this video for the repo. Since I've already cloned Anthos multi-cloud Terraform repo beforehand, I will directly go to the AWS folder in my local disk. After copying the repo to the local disk, you may need to update the Terraform TF-WAR files with the specific environment variables. As you can see, I've already put in my project ID and email address in this file. You can find the project number in the GCP console on the left side of the dashboard page or via the G-Cloud COI command. The admin user will be the GCP account email address that can log into the cluster once it's created via the Connect Gateway. In addition, you can put a cluster prefix name here and then define the type of EC2 instances and the regions you'd like to use with the cluster creation. And that's it. So now let's go ahead, initialize and create Terraform plan. Once started, the installation process will take about 12 minutes. After the script completes, it will install all relevant IS prerequisites in AWS, including VPC, subnets, Internet Gateway, Net Gateway, IAM roles, route tables, and so on. The Anthos GKE cluster on AWS will be provisioned with 3 control plane nodes with 1 in each availability zone, and a single node pool with 2 T3.medium nodes in an auto-scaling group to a maximum of 5 nodes. Now let's fast forward to the end of the cluster creation. The Anthos cluster on AWS is created successfully, as you can see here. Now that we have the AWS cluster set up, we can use the kubectl to interact with the cluster. But before that, we need to set up the context by using the G-Cloud container get credentials command. So let's get the credentials for the AWS cluster. This command sets up the context for kubectl that uses GKE Connect Gateway as the endpoint and authenticates the caller using the Google identity provided by G-Cloud. The command works out of box for private clusters even if you don't have outside internet access. Once we have the kubectl set up, we can start to use the kubectl to explore the clusters and deploy the workloads on the node pools. Now, let's navigate to the Google Cloud Console where we can interact with the cluster we've just created. There are two clusters here in the GKE cluster page. One is the GKE cluster that I've provisioned before this video. The other cluster is the AWS cluster that we've just created via the Terraform. The clusters appear on the GKE and Anthos cluster page in the Google Cloud Console. However, to see more details such as the nodes and workloads for any cluster outside the Google Cloud, you need to log in and authenticate to the cluster. There are a few options provided to you, and let's log in with the Google Identity option. Now we'll be able to see the similar cluster information as we have observed with kubectl CLI command earlier. Remember, we have enabled the system container logging via the gcloud command a moment ago in the terminal. Let's explore the system logs related to this cluster. You can see your logs directly from the Log Explorer by using the logging filters to select the Kubernetes resources such as cluster, node, namespace, or the container logs. And let's type in a query here. There are a few resource types such as the control plane component logs or the node pool logs. The Kubernetes container resource type that I put in here refers to the system apps log. Now you can see all the AWS cluster logs related to the system apps under the namespace of GKE Connect, GKE System, and Kube System in the GCP console. Now let's go back to the terminal and we'll create a new simple deployment and run a Hello app from the Anthos cluster on AWS that we've just created. And to do that, we're going to use the kubectl command here. Next step is to create a Kubernetes service, which is a Kubernetes resource that lets you expose your application to the external traffic. And let's run the following kubectl expose command. To inspect the Hello server service, let's run the kubectl get service command. Now we can view the application from the web browser using the external IP address shown here. Let's do that from the Google Cloud Console. On the GCP console, there is our AWS cluster listed in the Kubernetes Engine cluster page. Let's take a look at the workload we've just created. Here is the Hello server deployment, and let's click on it to view the details of the deployment. Remember, we have exposed the service via the kubectl command earlier. And now let's actually click on the external IP address listed up here. A new browser window is open with our app up and running. That concludes the demo for setting up the Anthos cluster on AWS. You can check out the step-by-step guide and the Terraform script for running the demo in the GitHub site here. To learn more about Anthos multi-cloud solution, please visit Anthos multi-cloud website. Thank you for watching the video.